Welcome to Open House, the real estate and mortgage show on News Talk 580 CFRA.
If you have any questions about mortgages or real estate, give us a call at 521-TALK. That's 521-8255 or text 580-580. With Frank Napolitano and Paul Rushforth, here is Steve Gregory.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
It most certainly is.
What a fantastic day. Hey, Frank, how are you, my friend?
Good morning. I'm doing very well, thank you. Just on my way home from a conference.
Frank is out of town. Paul is still celebrating his birthday, apparently. Greg Tilley is here. How are you, Greg?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Mr. Photographer, ultimate photographer. You do everything digital, right?
Oh, yeah, all digital these days.
I don't mean like digital pictures. I mean the digital stuff for Paul Rushforth.
I provide all the content for it, and then our operations manager, Jocelyn, kind of takes over from there and does all the posting. She writes a little more eloquently than I do. So
Operations manager. She needs a better title. Like president or something.
Well, she should be.
Yeah.
CEO.
Yeah. Hey, Frank. Frank,
Yeah.
you still with us? Just checking.
I'm with you. I know it's a big week coming up.
It is a huge week coming up, and all things are looking good. The slowing GDP is the last thing we have to worry about, right?
That was a big one. I mean, yesterday's announcement, there were also some U.S. numbers that came back that were relatively weak. So we went from, I thought it'd be about 50, 60% for this June. A lot of economists are now saying it's closer to 80%, unless Tiff already made up his mind before the numbers came out. Looks like the chances are much better than they were a few days ago, that's for sure.
Is there any reason he would not reduce interest rates now? I mean, every time this comes up, he goes, yeah, we're doing perfect. I just want to wait a little bit more.
Yeah, I think he's trying to learn from what the mistakes he made going in the other direction. You know, had he started earlier, then he wouldn't have had to do what he did. It just feels like he's just being extremely patient because he knows once he starts to drop rates, the expectation will be that they continue to come down. He doesn't want to overeat the housing. Again, I doubt the 0.25% will do anything, even 0.5%. We really believe that much more is needed, but we still have a housing issue. We still have supply issues in place, which aren't going away anytime soon. So, therefore, there's lots of pent-up demand out there, and that's the one thing that I bet keeps him up at night times, the fact that the last thing he needs is to see the craziness of the real estate market that we saw 2-3 years ago.
Well, how many points would it have to come down before that happened again?
Well, I think consumer confidence will go up immediately. Obviously, if once that first 0.25% cut is made, hopefully it's this Wednesday. But again, I mean that's going to help. It's not necessarily going to help anybody that's sitting on the sidelines. What this 0.25% will help is small businesses that have lines of credits to run their businesses. That's a 0.25% relief for them. Anybody that has a mortgage coming up for renewal, hopefully this 0.25% again gets the bond markets going downwards, and therefore we can see some fixed rate mortgage rates start to come down. So I think there's multiple factors out there, not only about mortgages. I mean, we talk about the mortgage end, but there's other facets of our lifetime or of our lives that will be impacted by this 0.25% decrease.
There's got to be a big chunk of mortgage coming up for renewal now, though.
Massive over the next 2.5 years, the biggest ever in a 2.5-year period. And, being in the States this week and chatting with, you get an Uber driver and lo and behold, doesn't he happen to be a real estate agent? And, of course, I started grilling him and, a couple of my friends are with me and they're saying, oh my God, look at him go on this. But I wanted to understand a little bit better as a real estate agent what they're going through here. And it's interesting because in the U.S., they have 30-year mortgages. So those mortgages are not affordable from one home to another. So, when I asked them, so what are sales like? He goes, we're all pushing towards new builds because the new builds, what they're doing, some of the builders are buying down the interest rates so they can get people to buy their new homes because on the resale market, very, very quiet.
Speaking of the States, they're coming back with 0 down mortgages again. Did you read that?
Interesting. Yeah, I did. Interesting. We'll see how that pans out. I mean,
because it worked so well the last time, Frank.
Of course, that's my point, right? I mean, look at the trouble it got them in, and now all of a sudden they want to revisit this. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes moving forward. But
so you get you would get 97% on your first mortgage, and the remaining 3% would be on a second mortgage. And the minute you sell the house, you've got to pay back that full 3%. Now, that second mortgage would be interest-free, but still, if you run into problems, you got to sell your house. You're in the ditch.
You could be immediately if you have to do it immediately, or depending on what happens with house prices.
Yeah.
Now, again, I mean, I think the fact that there's no skin in the game doesn't make any sense especially here where they're much looser with their policies. In Canada, I don't think we're ever going to see that. We saw it for a brief period after probably 2010, 2011. We saw the 0% down with the 40-year amortization. We'll probably never see that again in our lifetime. I think Canada has it right with 5% down payment. At least you've got some skin in the game. What I'd like to see, I think what a lot of people would like to see, is that first-time home buyer incentive brought back, but in a different format where, the government pitches in the 5% as a second mortgage interest-free, but they don't get ownership in the property.
But they're not going to do anything now. Once rates come down, they're not going to do anything because they'll be afraid the housing market's going to boom again.
For sure.
Well, I would disagree. Only because, there's something called an election coming in the next 16, 18 months. And, I think the current government is going to try and get some of those voters back. And who are the biggest voting group right now? The ones that are looking for home ownership and want to get into home ownership. So there's a chance that a program like that could be reinvented.
Greg, you're dealing with homeowners all the time. What's their attitude now?
Well, I mean, the thing about the Ottawa market for sure is that with the government here, it's a very stable market compared to a lot of other markets. And as Frank was saying, we don't do those 30-year mortgages and all that kind of stuff. So people that are ready to sell or ready to buy, they're ready now. So the challenge we're facing is inventory. Yeah. Exactly what Frank was saying a minute ago.
But when you're in people's homes, are they concerned that it's going to sell quickly?
Again, everybody's in a different position. I've had lots of conversations recently. People want to try selling. They want to get the most out of their property as they possibly can.
Or are we into a try situation now? Let's just put it on and see what happens?
And that's almost the worst thing you can do going in.
Yeah.
You want to listen to what your realtor's saying about pricing. They're telling you based on the comparables in the neighborhood. Your home, most of the houses in this market sell in 30 days or so. If you're taking longer than that, then there's an issue.
Yeah, pretty much the minute you walk into a house for the number of homes. What have you been in? More than 50,000 homes?
Yeah, somewhere between 50 and 60,000. Yeah.
So you pretty much know when you walk in. All right, I know what this is worth.
I can tell when I'm driving up the front.
You can put as much lipstick as you want on it.
No, for sure. But you can tell even how somebody's grass is cut and how their garden is maintained when you pull up out front. I know what I'm walking into when I walk in that front door. I know if it's pristine out front and they've got those nice diagonal cuts in the grass, that inside is going to be magical as well.
What's the first thing people say to you when they see you? Sorry about...
I'm not quite ready. I hear that a lot. Yeah. I need another 10 minutes. That's a lie too.
But it's pretty magical, the things you can do.
Yeah, I mean, we can do a lot with Photoshop for sure.
I remember having a whole bunch of boxes in my office, and you made them disappear. I didn't have to move one box. I was like, I love you, Greg.
No, for sure. I mean, we get homeowners asking a lot, like, can you fix this in Photoshop, whatever. The answer is generally yes. I mean, I can add pool and a palm tree if you want in the backyard.
But it's got to be realistic, right?
But it's got to be real. We can't misrepresent the property. And I mean, one of the big ones we always get is if there's power lines going across the front of the house. They're like, oh, the power lines make our house look so bad. Can you remove those? Can I? Yes. Will I? No. Yeah. That's misrepresenting the property. You want buyers that are coming to see it to be relatively prepared. You want to be honest about it, so when they show up that they're not really disappointed and show up and go, oh, power lines.
Yeah, you want to get them there, but at the same time, you don't want somebody going, ooh, I didn't know this was right next
I'm
door.
Surprised. What else are they hiding? And that's the next question coming out of the buyer's mouth, right? What else are they hiding?
Yeah. 521-TALK, 521-8255. We will be right back. Frank, don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Greg Tilley in for Paul Rushforth. Frank Napolitano is here-ish. Hey, did I tell you Greg bought coffee? Did I tell you Greg bought coffee?
That's fantastic. Way to go, Greg.
Breakfast on me this morning, Frank. Sorry you missed it.
And the breakfast was fantastic. It was 3 courses. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
Hey, here's some good news. Frank, you and I have been talking about this for a long time. Ontario's going to introduce financial literacy. 2025, kids are going to have to complete a new financial literacy requirement, which will teach them things like how to budget, How to save, that kind of thing?
I think that's fantastic news. Long overdue. So long overdue. I just think that, they're doing it in grade 10, which is awesome. But I think maybe an advanced one in grade 12 wouldn't be a bad idea either, so that when you get out of high school, you've got some literacy when it comes to credit cards, what not to do, what you need to do in order to make sure that moving forward, you'll be able to have access to as many credit products, specifically to car loans and or mortgages, as you're get ready, during that stage of your life.
Well, look at the numbers from TransUnion. 30% surge now in outstanding credit card balances for Gen Z, which is 12 to 27 years old. So
12.
It's up 30%.
Yeah. Again, I mean, that's the cost of living, right? The cost of living has gone up so much that...
but now if your credit card's overdue, Frank, your rating is going down the toilet. How are you going to get a mortgage?
Well, you're not. That's just it, right? So, but then again, if you've got... I always say to people, if all your credit cards are maxed out, then I don't think that getting a mortgage is the right time to do it anyway. You might have a dream for home ownership, but if you can't control yourself with credit cards, or you're in a position where you just don't make enough that you can't even pay off your credit cards, then at that point, maybe it's time that you do reconsider whether you got to wait a little bit longer before you can get into home ownership.
So how much does the average person have to save now before they get a house?
Well, minimum is 5% still. So, when you look at our city, maybe you can get into the condos in the fours. So that's a minimum of 20% rate, or 20,000 right there. And then once you start to incorporate, closing costs, even if you're a first-time home buyer, you might get the land transfer tax rebate, but you still have legal fees. You still have, if you're buying with less than 20% down, you've got the default insurance itself that's added to the mortgage, but the PST that comes from that default insurance you have to pay up front. So
how much extra should you be putting away then?
7%. So you should have a 7% down payment on what you buy. Now that's up until $500,000. Don't forget that if you buy a house with less than, or with 5% down, it changes to 10% once you exceed $500,000. So all of a sudden, if you're buying something for $600,000, you need 10% of that 100 over the $500,000. So therefore, your down payment now is $35,000. So your closing costs, you're going to need about close to $50,000 potentially, $45,000 to $50,000, which is significant, and that's hard to save up in this kind of time when everything else around us has gone up as much as it has.
Are people shocked when you tell them that?
They're surprised. I've had clients that call me and say, "Hey, Frank, we want to buy a house. We've got the 5% down, but we also have about $15,000 in credit cards, and we have a student loan for $20,000. Can we add those to the mortgage?" Right? Because they think that they can, as long as they have the down payment, then they can mortgage it they can consolidate that debt. But the problem is you cannot consolidate that debt. Your down payment is your down payment, and that's it. You cannot have a mortgage of $430,000 on a house that you're buying for $415,000. It doesn't work that way.
I think this goes back a lot to that financial literacy we were talking about that they're introducing. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
We didn't have that when I was in high school, and
well, I'm still working. Obviously, they didn't have it for me either.
Well, like Paul, I am also 50, and unfortunately, I can't go on a month-long birthday extravaganza.
I don't know why they haven't done this before.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
No,
it makes
I agree.
perfect sense.
Yeah. No, I wish I'd known a lot more about it.
That's the first thing you need when you get out of school is, all right, I got to make money. Now, what should I do with it?
Well, and I know Frank mentioned this a few weeks ago on the show. Like, you go from high school, you go in your first year of university, and there are people everywhere on campus. There were, when I did my first year, offering you credit cards.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
you go to a hockey game, and they're all over the place.
Yeah. Hey, you get a free T-shirt, eh?
Yeah.
But if you don't understand what that means, until it's too late, then, you've put yourself in a very, very difficult financial position.
Do you see a lot of credit card debt when people come in, Frank?
We're seeing much more now than we did a year ago, 2 years ago, and 3 years ago. Obviously, during the pandemic, everybody was able to save a lot of money and pay down their credit cards, which was fantastic. I mean, I wish those days would come back. And I think a lot of people were hoping that would continue. But reality sets in. I mean, with restaurants closed and travel limited, all that money that was going towards that stuff went away. So therefore, they were able to be a little bit more smarter with their money and pay down some of their credit debt. But Again, we're seeing now that the credit card debt is high. We're seeing personal loans. We're seeing people that went a little bit crazy with car loans. They bought more than they really needed. Now they've got these gigantic car loan payments of $800, $900, $1,000. And, I say to them, it's not quite a mortgage payment. It used to be as good as a mortgage payment, as much as a mortgage payment. It's not anymore. These mortgage payments are so much higher, but it does really influence whether you get approved or not.
Yeah, so don't make any big purchases before you get approval.
No, that's so critical these days. If you're looking to get into home ownership, and, I did a couple of TV interviews this week, and, the one message that I said is, first-time home buyers still got to wait on the sidelines. We're hoping the Bank of Canada starts to drop interest rates as early as Wednesday, and then follow through hopefully in July and September and so on, so that we get the prime rate. Pre-pandemic, the prime rate was at 3.95. Today's at 7.2. Do we have to get down to 3.95? No. But boy, would it be nice if that prime rate was down to 5%, because it's 5%. If you're getting mortgages anywhere in the 0.5 to 1% off, now you're in the fours, and then that's a much more reasonable mortgage payment, and hopefully gives people the ability to pay down their credit cards as well.
Yeah. What have you been shooting? Have you been shooting a lot of condos?
Not a ton of condos. We're single family is where it's at right now. Like,
really?
I know the stats aren't. It's just June 1st today.
Hopefully next week.
We should have the May stats next week. But I know sort of the preliminary, what the board is saying is that single family homes is where the sales are at right now. So, and that's what we're seeing as well. Like, I'm shooting a lot of single family homes.
I was on the website today. There's some bargains. There's some deals.
Yeah.
Like, if you're willing to move out of town.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like,
yeah.
You've taken pictures. I don't know, as far as Alaska, it seems. But
it starts with A.
But
Alfred.
there are some single family homes that you have on the website that are pretty cheap.
Yeah, there are some good deals out there. You have to be willing to travel a little bit further, for that pricing. But yeah, there's some great deals for sure.
It's all going to turn around.
It will, for sure.
Watch. It's going to turn around. I think we're going to get 2 consecutive rate decreases. The market's going to take off, and then the listings are going to go crazy.
Yep.
Prices are going to go up. People are going to go nuts.
Well,
and they'll be right back where we were 4 years ago.
That's what that's the saying, right, Frank? Is date the rate, marry the house.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, they say that, but again, I'm not as enthusiastic as Steve is. I hope you're right, Steve. But
I was being facetious a little there, Frank.
I know you were. But I think Bank of Canada governor is going to really be careful about the way he does this. I just sense in him that he doesn't want the markets to swing one way or the other too quickly. So he's seeing the right numbers. The GDP is down. The inflation is down. And, I think there's 2 countries in the world that put shelter in inflation, and we're one of them. So therefore, really, the argument could be made that we've been below 2% for almost a year now if we take away the shelter costs. So he's been extremely prudent. I give him a little bit of credit for doing it the way he has after, basically what happened 2 years ago. And I trust that he's going to do this very methodically and smart so that there isn't any wild swings one way or the other unless something happens in the world.
Yeah, but he's going to have a lot of pressure on him.
I agree with you.
He's going to have a lot of pressure on him over the next year and a half. If these rates don't come down, it's a big mess for people renewing.
I agree, but doing the 0.25% now, and I agree with you, when it comes to back-to-back. So, we've got, if we could do June 5th and July 24th, that's going to be 2 huge signs heading into the fall market, where the next one, there's none in August, and I will remember again. With the goal being that maybe we can be down 1%. That's what we need to be at, and then we're trending in the right direction. Hopefully we'll see the bond markets soften as well. We'll see some of those fixed rates that have been, in the high 4s and low 5s for a while now, for a few months. Hopefully we'll see those rates come down into the low 4s and mid 4s, because right now there's a lot of pressure on Canadians because they don't qualify on the higher variable rate. They're forced to take a 5-year fix. And then you kick yourself a year from now if rates have come down 1.5, and now you're stuck, on 5-year fix at 5% when the going rate is down to 3.5 or 4%, and that's not fair to Canadians either.
521 Talk 521-8255. We will be right back. We're back. Greg Tilley in for Paul. Frank is here. What's the biggest mistake people make before you show up to take pictures of their house?
mopping the floor.
Really?
Drives me insane.
They should mop, or they're wet when you get there?
They're wet when I get there. There's you gotta finish mopping 2 hours before I get there. The wet streaks on hardwood floors, anything like that, it shows in the photos. And
Really?
And that's one of the few things we can't really fix in Photoshop, just because there's so much pattern in floors and all that kind of stuff. It's really, really hard to take those streaks out and make it look real.
Now, are you moving furniture out of the way when you're taking these pictures to make it give the appearance of more space?
Typically, no. When the agents are going in and talking to the homeowners about the sale, they're kind of giving them guidance on, how to set up the room. But I mean, what we always tell people, and I will help, hey, we should readjust this here a little bit. It'll just make the room look a little bigger. That's what I always tell the clients. At the end of the day, you're selling space, not your stuff. Your stuff's going with you.
Yeah.
So you want to make the rooms look as spacious as possible. And I'm looking at it from both the photography point of view, but I also take into account the showing point of view. What's the first thing somebody sees when they walk in the front door? If it's a living room full of furniture and you can barely see any floor, you're going to have a hard time on that sale.
Yeah, it's too congested, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And people can't envision it. It's amazing. People can't envision, buyers can't envision their own things when a room is too full of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what we always suggest is you're selling the space.
What other recommendations?
Oh.
Before you get there, like, okay, I've just listed with Paul. I know you're coming. What do you want me to do?
Treat the photos like it's the first showing that you're having of your house. Because really it is. I'm coming in, I'm going to do photos, I'm going to do some video, I'm going to do a 3D walkthrough thing on it, which is amazing. But people are going to be able to see just about everything. Now, probably the second question I get asked is, you're not doing the closets, are you? No. Unless you've got like a celebrity Beverly Hills closet. No, we are not photographing the closets at all.
There's nothing. That's where all the junk goes anyway.
It's got to go. But at the end, by the time showings come, the closet should be relatively cleaned out. You can have a reasonable amount of things in it, but same idea. If a potential buyer's walking through the house and they're opening the closet doors and look, is there enough space in this house for us, for our things?
Yeah.
And they're just jammed to the hilt, the closets. You're not, you're going to have a hard time on that sale.
And what are you doing with pets when you show up?
Generally, I'll ask the clients just to either take them on a different floor when I'm there, because you don't want to turn somebody off in the photos just because they don't like dogs or cats or iguanas or whatever.
Yeah.
And especially
you don't want to scream out pet house either, right?
You don't. So and that's why we'll typically hide that stuff. The goal of the photos, from our point of view, is to get people to the neighborhood to see if they like the house in the position where it is, and if they like the overall bones of the house, and then discover, the rest of the storage space, all that kind of stuff. So we try in the photos to remove anything that potentially might make somebody not go. And there are a lot of people that don't like pets.
Yeah.
And that's fair.
Yeah.
But
not everybody wants to buy a house that's had a pet in it.
No, for sure. But sometimes it is the right house for that buyer.
Yeah.
Even though there's been a dog living there, say.
No, I'm not saying it's the end of the world.
Yeah. No.
You want to take out anything that might turn people off, right?
We want to get them to that neighborhood and get to see where that property is and if it's right for them.
Should I ask you the worst things you've seen when you've gone into people's homes?
Not on the air.
So let me ask you this. If you're taking a picture of a house and it has two kitchens, how do you differentiate between the two?
It's a big plus. It's a huge plus.
It's true. The basement one always has the biggest stock pot in it. That's how you know.
Hey, Frank, if rates don't come down on Wednesday, what are the odds they'll come down 50 basis points in July?
I would say slim. I don't know that they'll do the first rate drop by significant. It's all, I think for him, it's all going to be a comfort level. Let's do one. Let's do another one. Let's see how the numbers shake out and how Canadians are feeling. I think I will give him credit. I think he understands the Canadians are struggling, whether it's mortgage holders, whether it's businesses, small businesses. We need to support our local businesses. So, they are the biggest employer that's out there. As much as the big corporations seem to get a lot of the attention, the small business is what keeps our economy thriving. So, I think he again, I really believe that he's going to methodically do this correctly so that there's no second guessing. There's no having to go the other way. He's going to do it so that he'll continually start to drop until he gets to that number that he thinks now Canada should be working with moving forward. And very similar to where we were pre-pandemic. We hit that 3.95. There were rumblings about the prime rate maybe going up a little bit that year in 2020, but we're talking 0.25% or 0.5%. So once we get in that 4, we're at the bank. When you go to the bank, the prime rate that's being used is 4% in around that range. I think there's a comfort zone for Canadians where the mortgage rates are reasonable, as long as housing prices doesn't go crazy the way they did during the pandemic. And hopefully we'll continue to see everything else around us stabilize so that we don't see any big jumps in food prices and or gas.
But how big can the gap be between the States and Canada? It can't be huge, right?
Well, again, I think that there's, at least most economists think that there's 0.75 of a point that Canada can start off with. Now, is it going to hurt the Canadian dollar? Of course it is, and that's what's going to pay the price for it is the Canadian dollar. But at the end of the day, you got to take care of your own, and I think that that's the most important thing is you got to take care of Canadians and the ones that are households. And I say, like I said, I did a TV interview this week, and I say for young Canadians that aspire to become homeowners, the dream shouldn't be, you shouldn't be putting the dream away. I think the potential is going to be there, but you need to be very smart, and financial literacy is a good start, where you need to understand that to get into home ownership, you need to have excellent credit, you need to have minimal high interest rate debt, and you need to have good job stability. And those 3 are very critical. So, while you're waiting for rates to come down, focus your energies on not spending lavishly on anything. Don't go out and buy an expensive car. Buy something that keeps your payments reasonably low, and pay down as much debt as you can, and try to save that minimum down payment so that you put yourself in a position where things are normal and interest rates are back down. You're going to be able to go out there and start looking at homes and bring that dream alive, as opposed to right now, a lot of Canadians are feeling like they may never be able to own a home, and that's just not right.
Yeah, and if you're starting out, try not to get into debt of any kind.
Well, but that's easier said than done sometimes. If you're in school, you may come out of school with school debt. And
well, don't go to school. Get out of school. Get out of school right now.
Yeah.
Well, even to what Frank's
reasonable.
Even to what Frank's saying, the cost of used cars is crazy. So it's really difficult to stay out of debt. I would imagine
But I don't know how people are rebounding from school loans. Period.
Well, yeah, that's a whole other.
There's your down payment right there
for sure.
How are they doing it,
the
Frank?
one thing I'll say about school loans. Well, the school loans. One thing I'll say about them, they're very long term. So a lot of the school loans don't necessarily have high monthly payments. So normally you see in school loans anywhere between $200 to $300 a month, which is reasonable. Even though your student loan might be $40,000, $50,000, that's going to take you 10, 12 years to pay it off. But again, the monthly payment is low, and I don't know that now you have a choice, right? So you could save your down payment and buy a home, or you can take that down payment and pay off the student loan. But now you're probably adding 5, 6 years before you can get into home ownership. So it depends on where your comfort zone is and where you are career-wise and what the expectation is moving forward career-wise. But, we're starting to see 2 couples buying homes together. Like I've done a couple of them already this year where, they just now, instead of buying a townhome or a condo, they're buying a single home, with 3 or 4 bedrooms. And, again, if there was that second kitchen, how great would that be in those scenarios? But, because then each of them have their own kitchen. How awesome would that be? But, we're going to start to see a lot of it. And this happens quite frequently in Europe where, we're starting to see kids stay in the home longer. But maybe kids are going to get married and maybe start their family where they're still going to be with one of the parents or 2 of the parents, on one of the sides, and just, give them more time to save money and prepare themselves so that, as they get further ahead, then they're going to be in a position. And listen, it's not what parents want to hear. Last thing you want is somebody living in your house until they're 40. But, as parents, I think our job is to help our kids get ahead in life. And it's a small sacrifice to make, in my opinion.
I'll just to add to that, Frank, I've seen probably in the last 2 years more and more in-law suites and secondary dwelling units in houses. I think I shot 3 in the last 2 weeks that have additional units in them that are either in-law or separate apartments in single-family homes.
Like recently
I think the municipalities need to do a better job. Like the municipalities now I think need to reinforce the fact that, hey, and there's this $40,000 loan that's been proposed. Let's see when the details come out on this. And I think we're going to start to see the details in the next couple of weeks on whether, what's involved in this $40,000 renovation / upgrade. Is it to put secondary units in there since we have a lack of housing? What bylaws need to be followed in order to get that? I think that they've got some decent ideas, but what they come out with is not necessarily good when you see all the fine print that goes with it. And we need to make sure that the fine print is what we want it to be, from a standpoint of really allowing Canadians to use that money to be able to maybe, upgrade a home so that whether it's their adult kids or adult or parents that are maybe, they can sell their home. Because the one thing in Canada that's very, very clear is that people are living in bigger homes longer when you've got, a couple that's living in a 2,500 square foot home when they really don't need a 2,500 square foot home. 1,200 should be more than enough for them.
There's going to have to be zoning changes that come with that, though, too, right, Frank?
Yes, agreed. But this is where we're at. Like, we don't have a choice at this point because we can't build houses fast enough to catch up to where our population is gone. We just can't. It's impossible. They can say what they want, goals for 2030, 2032. It's next to impossible. We've never had a 5 or 6 or 7 year period where we built the homes that they say we need. So the chances of it happening, and with tradespeople in short supply, it's not going to happen. We need to make some decisions on how to be able to get there, knowing that houses aren't going to be built fast enough.
Yeah, good luck on getting 3 levels of government to agree.
That's the problem.
Yeah, the problem is now, not in 2030 or 2032.
Well, the problem should have been seen 15 years ago or more.
Should have been.
Yeah, should have been. It's easy to look back, isn't it?
Exactly.
521-TALK, 521-8255. We will be right back.
Hey.
Welcome back to the show. Greg Tilley is here. Frank Napolitano is here-ish again. Excuse me while I just die for a minute. So I'm reading this stat on how much debt millennials have, Frank. 38% of everything in the country. That makes sense to me. Does it make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. When you're starting and, what the houses being where they've been.
But that's the wheelhouse for debt, right? 28 to 43. That's where you just, you're going to make more money the next year, or at least you think you do. And it's just like, let's stretch it out as much as we can.
And you're in your maximum mortgage, starting it out at the beginning. And yeah.
Correct. You're in the early stages of your career and building your financial wealth. And, once you get into that first house, that first mortgage was always at its highest point, like Greg said. So it makes sense. Again, I think sometimes the numbers make it look much more dimmer than it should be because, again, there's a lot of people that sit down in front of me that have really, really excellent financial, mind where it comes to they know exactly where they are. They understand that they've got some debt, but they also see that their incomes will continue to rise. And in a lot of cases, you've got a young family where daycare isn't inexpensive. We haven't seen a lot of those $10 daycare centers open up yet. So when you're spending as much as you are in daycare, you're just waiting until your kid turns 4 years old where they go into school full time and your daycare costs come down. So you're at that period in your life where everything seems to be the most expensive that you'll ever go through.
So now the 5-year fixed mortgage is what, 4.79 now, Frank?
Yeah, at a high ratio, that means you're purchasing with less than 20% down and or more, or that's 35% down. And it's a purchase, not a refinance, or it could be a mortgage switch from one lender to another where you were default insured when you originally bought it. But again, and that one has a 25-year amortization maximum. So again, I think there's a lot of pressure on the government to bring back the 30-year. And I know that they made an announcement at the budget that the 30 years back if you're buying a newly built, constructed home and you're a first-time home buyer. But this week they also announced that the default insurance premium, where if you buy with 5% down and take a 25-year amortization, your default insurance premium is 4%. So therefore, you're basically, when you do 5%, by the time you have the default insurance, you're basically back to what you paid a house. Well, if you're buying a new build from with the 30-year amortization, the default insurance premium is 4.75%. So,
wow.
You talked about earlier in the show buying a house with no money down. Well, that's essentially what you're doing, because by the time they add that 4.75% default insurance premium, plus you pay up front the PST on that premium, you're pretty well. You purchased the home with 0% down.
Wow.
Well, that's not good.
It's not good. But the risk level.
No, yeah, but if you've got to sell in the next,
if
you have to sell the next 2 or 3 years, you're done.
You shouldn't be buying. Like, honestly, like when you buy a house, you need to have a 5-year plan, in my opinion. Like, that first home, by the time you incorporate your legal fees, your land transfer tax, and then if you have to sell it and you're incorporating real estate commissions and everything else that goes with it, potential penalty to pay off your mortgage. If you're not buying and you have a 5-year plan in place, then don't buy. Continue to rent, honestly, because it doesn't make any sense because you're not going to come out ahead financially.
No, I'm just thinking of situations that might happen,
Unless we have what the pandemic did, which is drive house prices up tremendously.
Yeah.
But the reality is that if you live in the city of Ottawa, you can probably count on anywhere between a 2 to 4% increase of your house value on an annual basis. And that's what you can count on. So,
well, that's what the forecast is for this year. This year's forecast is about 4%, Frank.
And we're not that far off, I don't think. Like, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I'm betting that we're trending towards that number this year.
Of course, if you want 8 or 9 or 10%, get Greg in to take photos.
Wow.
I mean, I agree with that.
One thing about photos, Greg, and I think you say the same thing. I don't know what these cameras do, but they make rooms look larger sometimes than they really are.
There is a way to take that, though, right?
You got to be careful how you use your angles for sure. But that's what I always tell people. Keep in mind, they're marketing photos. The goal of these photos is to get people in the door.
But there's a lens that you can use that will make the room look stretched out, to look a little bigger. No,
there's some really interesting physics around wide-angle lenses, and that is beyond my scope of education. But like the wide-angle lenses can distort things. We try not to do that too much, but again, we want to show lots of floor, lots of space.
It's hard to show a whole room at once. Right?
Absolutely. My job's to get people in the door. After that, it's up to the realtors to work out the deal.
I think they should come out with anti-widening lenses for cell phones. This way I can look thinner. But anyway.
That exists, Frank. There's apps you can get for that.
I don't want to tell you why I need a zoom lens, but hey, in the fixed mortgages, is the possible reduction this Wednesday already put into place? Is it already accounted for in that 479?
I feel like it is. I mean, the bond markets came down 12 basis points in a matter of minutes after the numbers came out yesterday morning. So the anticipation is there. The Bank of Canada could be dropping as early as Wednesday, June 5th. But again, I mean, the bond market really fluctuates based on everything else, every other report. And there's reports on a daily basis. Just some of them really don't impact mortgages, but it impacts everything else. So, on a weekly basis, I'm looking at 2 or 3 or 4 specific reports that are coming out that influence everything moving forward. So they may not have immediate influence on it, but there is influence at some point. So therefore, you can almost look at those numbers and see where everything else is trending. So, once this meeting is over on June 5th, I mean, he's going to have 2 months of statistics in some of those areas. So he'll be able to at that point, be able to make a decision fairly, or at least we'll be able to see what the numbers look like and know whether there's another rate cut if he starts in June, another one coming in July.
Hey, Greg, I wanted to ask you about the townhome development we were talking about earlier.
Oh yeah, we got this. This amazing townhome development out in Rockland, Clement Cove. The builder, C.H. Clement, amazing. These guys do an amazing job. We have a seminar actually coming up on June 17th at 7 p.m. at the Rockland Golf Course. If people want to learn more about the development there, we've got some great units that are coming up pretty soon. We're coming up on pre-sale. Some of them backing onto the golf course, some of them with walkout basements, 70-foot lots. Like there's some really, really, really nice units.
70-foot lots. So it's not just
not all of them. No. It's townhomes with 70-foot deep, like really big backyards. Not the whole development, but there are sections of it, backing onto the golf course that have some really deep yards on it.
I didn't even know you could do that. I never I've never seen a townhome with a deep lot.
No, it's amazing, and they're really nicely built. The construction's great. Anyway, that's June 17th at 7 p.m. And if you're interested to get a little bit more information, meet the builder. You can get a lot more information about financing, about the building process, all that kind of stuff. It's at the Rockland Golf Course, June 7th, 7 p.m. You can register at Clement Cove
June 7th
Seminar.
or 17th?
Oh, sorry, June 17th. At 7 p.m. Got my sevens mixed up.
And they say men don't listen.
You can register at clementcoveseminar.com if you're interested in going to that.
Do that again, Clement?
clementcoveseminar.com.
Awesome. Birthdays, Frank?
Yeah, I got a couple. My mom, who celebrated her birthday this week, 89 years old, superwoman. Incredible that she still cooks and does everything else on her own. So very proud of her. And my beautiful niece, Vanessa, is tying the knot this coming Friday with Spencer. And they've been together for a long time. And I so look forward to, a great opportunity to see your family and celebrate a really incredible event with my niece and her soon-to-be husband.
Hey, my mother turns 91 on Friday. So, Frank, I guess we know what our grandparents were doing at this time of year. Got anything, Greg?
Nope, I'm good. Thanks for having me in today, guys. Really appreciate it.
Always good to see you. Franco, enjoy the week.
And sorry you have to buy your own breakfast there. Sorry about that.
Oh, I'm sure he'll bill Paul. Have a great week.
Bye, everybody.
Have a great week and support local businesses and charities, everyone.